What's up, everyone? We're back with the very first episode of AI Unfiltered podcast, where startup truth replaces the dictator. I'm your host, Maggie, startup mentor and go-to-market strategist out of Silicon Valley. And today we've got a very special guest joining us. Let's get into it. Today at AI Unfiltered, we're joined by Fernando Lorenzo, managing partner at Universal AI Services, where he's redefining how enterprises build private compliant AI systems. With tech background in Harvard, data analytics, and strategy consulting, Fernando bridges deep tech with real-world impact. Fernando, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks, Maggie. Glad to be here.
Awesome. We're going to get straight into it. So, who were you before Universal AI Services, before the strategy decks and VC panels existed? Tell us about that.
Well, I mean, if we were to start much, much earlier at the beginning phases of my life, I was actually an actor and model in a very early chapter of my life. Yeah, I was born and raised in Los Angeles to two amazing parents, and I was very lucky enough to be able to pursue that passion at a very early age. From ages 11 to 18, I was basically going from one audition to the next, going to gigs, interviews, and all that sort of amazing opportunity. And then around age 15 and 16, I started running a 3D printing company, building 3D printers and printing out people's works out for inventors and hobbyists all over the world. And that's around the time as well when I started learning more about what's happening in Silicon Valley. And one of the reasons why I decided to come and make the Bay Area my home. And so not long after the age 18, I went over there and never looked back. As far as recently, as fast forward to today, I graduated studying with my master's around computational science and data analytics at Harvard. And my previous role before Universal AI Services, I actually showcased what was at the forefront of numerous technologies and industries to many VCs and corporate VCs and C-suite level executives, primarily for the Japanese corporations, but also for the greater world.
What an incredible journey. And I must say, true hustler. That's like a Bay Area spirit. You started in cell and molecular biology. What drew you from studying living systems to building intelligent digital ones?
So it started right around the time when a few beloved family members started kind of like, okay, they started becoming like diagnosed with terminal illnesses, also kind of like at an early age. And so it made me question about like everything and like kind of like what life is about. And so it was one of the main reasons why I wanted to study biology, is because I wanted to learn everything there is to how life operates, and being able to like take advantage of ways of how we can try to maximize the best of what we have right now.
Super fairness. Was there a defining moment when you realized data wasn't just information, it was power?
Yeah, so there wasn't necessarily like the defining moments, but there were small snippets of it here and there. And one of the reasons why I ended up majoring and studying at Harvard around data analytics and computational sciences is because I noticed like through some of my aspirational models as well, such as Jeff Bezos, like he was able to leverage this sort of data to be able to understand like there's something happening within this little field at the time called the internet back in the 90s. And so just that line alone has from age roughly 16, 17, also around the time when I started learning about Silicon Valley, is around the time when I realized, data is so much more than just the numbers and what one sees. Like it's a sort of art and a sort of foundational base that meshes art and science where it was never thought possible before. And so given my background in the arts, I definitely want to try to continue engaging and hopefully be one of those sort of leading models in terms of converging art and sciences together to shape a better world.
I love your perspective, and it's super unique. Looking back, how did your early research at San Francisco State and Harvard shape the way you now think about AI models and structure?
So yeah, that basically started with just simply talking to people. And thankfully I was in an environment where everyone was ambitious at something. And so just being able to surround yourself with like people, not necessarily like-minded people, but people who really have really big dreams or being able to do stuff that is like meaningful to society is kind of like helped shape to who I am. And as far as like when I was doing research at San Francisco State, for example, I was basically I was leveraging this sort of data visualization tool to be able to understand like different cell molecular structures, and then also spotting, okay, what are the kinds of like outliers through the AI at the time. It was only in the 2010s when AI wasn't really as developed as it is today, how it could be better used to be able to spot things much more easily. And so like just knowing the power of what AI can do like today is kind of like also helped shape of why, and is one of the reasons why I ended up creating universal AI services. And one of the projects that we've been working on is showcasing to. It felt like this kind of power should be more accessible to the world, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to continue showcasing through events every month on what is at the forefront of numerous industries to many people interested in around the world.
That felt like your true journey as you started building. And then actually exactly what I wanted to know, like you've worn so many hats, researcher, consultant, founder. What was the real spark that made you start Universal AI Services? I know you touched a little bit upon it.
Yeah, so it it's like, so when it came to creating universal AI services, it was something that was kind of developed a little bit through an evolutionary process, is how I would kind of see things scientifically a little bit. There wasn't really one set moment, but there were hints, there were signs. Keeping into account the context of the family that I was born and raised in as well. Everyone in my family is an entrepreneur. From my mother being able to try her hand at real estate, even going, surviving through the Great Recession of the most challenging of times, to my father helping to build some of the most amazing structures that many people use today, from LAX to JFK, and to my brother, who who has failed 3 startups, but finally got acquired and became successful on his fourth. It's like just all of that was kind of like was kind of like the inspiration for behind Universal AI Services. And before this, I was at a company called ValueNext, and my intention was, okay, to just really try to learn the ropes and learn the structure for how business is being made. But for my mindset, it's also trying to understand and think analytically in ways that can benefit hopefully everyone involved.
Awesome. So you got the homeschooling in leadership.
Yes, both in a formal and informal settings. Yes.
That's actually the best way to enter, and then you become like a whole different innovator. So speaking of that, like what gaps do you see in enterprise AI that no one else was addressing at the time?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in enterprise, at least from my perspective, I don't know about any other people's perspective, it would be like I noticed there's this sort of pattern about like, okay, most people it seems are kind of like following along the trends, and some things I noticed that hasn't been well addressed is around how like it's around being able to listen to the businesses and also really trying to understand kind of like the customer at heart.
Right.
And so, like at the end of the day, what it comes down to, because a lot of these enterprise AI, if we were to really get down to the root level causes, is trying to make sure this sort of like communication is like also like not only it's like the most important is transparency, communication itself, and being able to not think in this form of like sort of like one-sidedness.
Right.
So I think that is going to be like the opportunity that I see like moving forward is like, because unfortunately the challenge, at least as far as like what enterprise AI is going through it, like on a holistic level, and this is not just for enterprise AI but just like most people in general, is okay, there's this sort of like, if you're meeting someone, there's this sort of rush to just like, you don't want to waste their time, like okay, let's just like just move on to someone else kind of mentality. So I feel that sort of opportunity should be changed in an effort to like, you should really try to understand where that person's going to, because in the Bay Area it's a pretty small community relative to other major cities like New York City and everything. And so being able to give people like those people a chance, like a better chance at showing greatness, and being able to think, okay, beyond just like one way, like, okay, what are some ways to be able to like collaborate on, is going to be key moving forward, especially if we're trying to get out of this mindset of like this bubble that kind of exists in Silicon Valley.
Right. Very, very fast paced environment. What were those early months like? Building credibility, earning clients, building the tech stack, and especially like early stage of AI. Like now AI is so sexy. Like even the grandmother knows about like AI and robots. It's crazy how it's like gathering adoption. But like, what was the early months like?
It is definitely quite difficult because you will encounter a lot of no's, but
Yeah.
within those no's there are also a lot of useful no's, where it's like, okay, you will encounter like meaningful people where it's not just like no, but here's a reason behind the no's, right? That gives one the opportunity to improve and hopefully have a yes later on. And so yeah, there was a lot of grinding for sure, I will say, and especially when trying to build universal AI services. There's still a lot of grinding happening right now and a lot of discoveries being made. But in essence, we are trying to work with everyone we encounter as much as possible, just trying to figure out creative ways, as well as leveraging generative AI and how to make these sort of like partnerships happen more frequently. So yeah, a lot of grinding, but and that's kind of expected when you're trying to run a small but fast growing startup, especially in a very fast paced environment. So expect that, but also, yeah, just any advice for the future people watching, make sure not to lose yourself either, because it can be very easy to do that.
Definitely. So, in your opinion, what's the biggest misconception large enterprises have when they adopt AI? Speaking of that.
That AI needs to be in everything. It doesn't always need to be in everything, but it should be in because it kind of detracts from the overall purpose of why AI was made in the first place, which is to help people. And right now there is this sort of like, okay, ChatGPT moment that has recently happened, and I'm sure it has been very useful for people who know how to use it, right? But being able to integrate, for example, robots into this space is going to be a whole different game changer because it's going to be able to allow people to hope like to think in ways that were never thought possible as well. And so being able to like get out of this mindset of, oh, this is just AI, it's going to be important to really think, okay, it's not just AI, but like if you think about, the robotics scene that's happening, that's quickly building up, at least in this, just not even in this last decade, but just in the last this last 2 years is quite an amazing feat. Really trying to, getting like making sure to be open-minded is going to be very important moving forward, and really trying to break down kind of like the fact that, okay, AI is going to take over jobs. I don't think it's going to take over jobs. It's going to create more jobs than it is going to take them, as a matter of fact. Because if AI ends up becoming super intelligent to the point where it surpasses that of all humans, that's actually going to be a very good thing, because there are still a long ways to go in order for this AI to be able to really understand humans. Not only beyond, because the current limitations for AI at the moment is 99.99% of all data created, even as we speak today, is around what one sees and what one hears and like the text behind it. But there's so much more to that, right? Smells, there's taste, and there's touch. And those are going to be very important attributes when trying to design much more advanced robots that is to our liking, and hopefully for the benefit of society itself.
What a great perspective. And thank you so much for sharing that, because this is like the biggest issue that we're facing, especially with the robotics also. So now let's actually talk about universal AI services. Like, what makes the approach stand out from other enterprise AI firms?
The original kind of vision is we want to be that sort of like premier kind of AI consulting and just like sort of innovation lab, in a sense, for Silicon Valley, because it was made by Silicon Valley people. Yes, you hear like, for example, McKinsey and Bain and Accenture, but they're not even headquartered in the West Coast at all. They're all headquartered in like the East Coast or some place in the EU. And there's not really that sort of like premier like company that is able to cater towards everyone for Silicon Valley companies that really understands the culture and the context behind it. And so that was one of the inspirations behind it. And I guess our approach to standing out is, one is trying to create these sort of engaging events where we try to have, for example, an artist or entertainer, like for the first 5 minutes of our program, and in the last half to kind of like help wake up the audience. We do ways within these events of trying to maximize, like, I guess, enjoyment out of it and satisfaction of like trying to make it more memorable and as memorable as possible. Not only just showing the data, but also like all the other little things, like being able to source food from a local business, and trying to engage the arts and entertainment community, for example. So being able to have this sort of like once a month events, and having this, what we're offering is like, we have this this robot named Atlas, who's able to also showcase kind of like, the future or the inspiration for what's to come as well. So a few different things, as well as like Project Atlas, which I guess we'll cover later on.
Awesome. And it's a super Bay Area spirit, like building that community level, like where you really understand the Silicon Valley spirit. It's amazing. I love the enthusiasm. So how do you balance innovation with compliance when building private models? I know this is a huge subject for a lot of thought leaders out there.
Right. I mean, it kind of also boils down to like making sure that it doesn't displace or hurt anyone, like in that sense, right? It kind of brings me down back to like when I was around 15 or 16 years old. I was kind of experimenting with biological 3D printers and printing out people's organs and tissues. And because I wanted to try to leverage the 3D printers to be able to create new tissues. Like, so if you had a cancerous growth, you'd be able to simply remove it and then just replace it with tissues that were grown from your own stem cells. And so I did encounter a little bit of that sort of like compliance or bureaucratic issues, because at that time I did not know, as a 16-year-old, you were supposed to get this sort of like biocertification level rating, and you're supposed to have like specialized lab equipment and everything, and most importantly, okay, the professional licensure to be able to experiment with other people's cancer cells. So it's so it kind of like, given all that, when it came to making sure I would try to balance everything, the idea is just making sure that we try to minimize the sort of like suffering, I guess, and try to anticipate, but also minimizing like how that's going to work is going to be important. And so in terms of like how we would try to balance it, is we would definitely try to read the terms and conditions and and privacy policies of every model that we try to use and leverage. And so I understand compliance isn't really a topic that has been kind of like discussed a lot, but at least through the data I've seen, it is becoming an increasing trend, at least in the last 6 months. And it's going to be more important to, like, when we are trying to design, I guess when politicians are trying to design new regulations around it, that hopefully they can try to anticipate, okay, regulations that will hopefully withstand in the next 10 years, because more often than not, unfortunately in politics, they tend to lag a little bit behind. And that's not necessarily the fault of themselves, but rather the whole design of how just democracy is. As much as like its amazing benefits, there's always opportunities for improvement. And one of these opportunities for improvements is hopefully in the future, we would be able to make sure that with this AI, it would act as a sort of assistant in making sure, like, okay, with a genuinely good AI with good intentions, hopefully they will be able to create and design behaviors and help shape the narrative, not only for countries, but also for companies themselves, including ours. We hope to use that as a sort of like assistant moving forward.
Thank you for sharing that. Moving on to the next question. What tangible change have you seen inside companies after deploying your systems?
We noticed, okay, companies are starting to give this AI the sort of like free reign for at least the smaller startups that we've been working on. They've been recently increasingly relying on just like, they don't necessarily know the mechanics behind the AI that they're using. And we don't even know right now if the AI is simply just hallucinating in the sense of it just saying just like very positive things or just trying to agree with us just to be agreeable. So, but I also noticed, okay, like on that sort of fundamental level, there's a sort of like companies trying to craft like prompts that would also allow them to know the AI's intentions and as well as the robot's intentions from both like a positive and negative light. So really, they're really trying to understand the behavior, not just on a surface level of just like trying to be agreeable with you, but also like what's behind that, sort of like what's making you agree, but is there something like kind of nefarious behind it as well? So that at least that's the things that I've been seeing.
Thank you. And if universal AI services disappear tomorrow, who would first feel it and why?
Yeah, so it would probably, well, I mean, when it comes down to it, the people who always look forward to seeing our monthly events are going to be like, they would have lost a sort of sense of like 'cause we're trying to be the sort of like Saturday Night Live or Jimmy Kimmel Live but specifically for tech, where we would showcase to the community and the world what's happening here at the forefront of Silicon Valley. So the ones who are regularly watching and like staying up to date are going to be, unfortunately, probably most saddened about our loss, because it is really difficult to find good information as well. And oftentimes, such good information is often blocked by very expensive paywalls. And so we're trying to democratize the sort of paywalls, because people usually charge tens of thousands of dollars of information. We're just frankly just giving it for free because it's important for what we believe is important work, so that people can actually support and actually, hopefully for some of them, like create new businesses and out of that is very valuable for society. It would be very difficult for them to try to find like AI systems and services that actually caters to them, more often than not, because like they're just simply too expensive otherwise. If you try to go for like a big company that doesn't necessarily have your that has your goals and vision at heart. They like, so we're trying to be the sort of like a go-to person for the small and medium businesses that they can hopefully rely on moving forward. That is not too expensive either.
Yeah, I love how Universal AI Services is adding services to these diverse set of like clients and fan base. Switching gears to your leadership and vision, you've led teams from academic to consulting boards. How has your leadership style evolved?
It feels like things are becoming more like, as far as how I would consider my personality, kind of like leadership is, at least at the moment, or at least in the past, is it has revolved around trying to be the sort of facilitator, not necessarily in terms of like pleasing everyone, but also really prioritizing those who that can create the most tangible and most desirable outcomes possible. And so I would say it has evolved in the sense of through past experiences, the need to be able to do what's, I guess, the art of the deal, so to speak. And I would say it has evolved to take on more, I guess, to try to be the sort of like facilitator, especially when you have like very, very passionate teams with very different goals and very different values in mind.
That's super cool. What is your long-term vision for Universal AI Services and for private LLMs as a category?
Yeah, so our long-term vision for Universal AI Services is this, not only have to, so the vision for Universal AI Services itself is it would be this sort of like the go-to AI company that allows people to create projects and to try to create like innovative projects. Universal AI Services can be the sort of go-to place for the where they can learn about what's happening here in Silicon Valley, as well as other tech fronts and other industries. For private large language models itself, we hope to see LLMs taking into account, okay, not just like audios and visuals, but also the smells and the taste and touch that a human would recognize. And if you're thinking about this, like say decades from now, it can hopefully take into account other species, from rabbits to frogs, and like being able to gather hopefully like their kinds of like perspectives and visions and data sets, trying to create that, like bugs, insects, really trying to create this sort of like similar to how the Human Genome Project was created. There should be, hopefully it could start an era of something much greater and much like moving forward beyond the simple senses of touch, seeing, and text.
But tell me, entering into this business, what were the challenges that you face going to market with your audience? Also, like attracting talent. Our audience would really love to know, like when you go into this like innovative early adopter path, what are the like first few challenges to look out for that were very common and something that you faced again and again?
Yeah, I mean, just making sure you go to the right environment to locate these people is going to be important. And one of the other first challenges I remembered, at least like we face, isn't necessarily about the technology itself. It's about how we translate it. And so like in AI itself, especially like when you're thinking about this in an enterprise level, like people don't always necessarily know what they're buying. And so some would expect like a chatbot out of it. Others can imagine it as like, okay, that sort of digital oracle or that owl of Minerva. And so at least for our experience, our first hurdle was educating the market or the people that we are targeting, and really trying to let them understand that like private, like that AI itself isn't necessarily just a feature, but it's gonna be like an infrastructural or a core like shift in terms of like how we like just the mindset itself. The second challenge is definitely gonna be around trust. And so like when we were trying to tell companies, okay, like when we're like it will help build the model and it will be trained on your private data. Like, of course, our first instinct is going to be like that of being cautious. So the goal here, or the opportunities that we're actively building upon, is earning that trust. And being able to earn that takes a lot of transparency. Having this sort of like clear frameworks and proof that both privacy and innovation can exist is going to be it's like trying to convince them that both can still be had at the same time is definitely a challenge where we're still building upon, and how we protect their data as well moving forward. And I guess the final one is also going to be around like attention. I mean, right now, as one may note, Silicon Valley is kind of just like saturated with all this noise around like, oh, like AI can change everything. But when you really look at the meaning, or like kind of the roots, one must note that like a lot of this growth behind this AI is not from necessarily the ads or pitches, but just the outcomes that has spoke for themselves. And so being able to deploy these like these sort of AI systems and tools has created like actual measurable and tangible change inside the organizations and the ones we interact with quite often. So just to reiterate it, like the first few challenges is like, okay, earning that sort of trust, that sort of credibility is important, and educating kind of like for those who don't understand the problem we are trying to solve, because without, if they don't understand the problem, they will not be able to understand like the value of our solution. And the third one is just making sure to stay human grounded. We have to remember, okay, people invest in alignment, like alignment of goals, and not necessarily in just algorithms itself. And so just making sure that we are clear on our purpose, or making sure you are clear on your purpose, will be one of the most important attributes moving forward. And just that overall concept itself is like, keep in mind these early challenges aren't technical, they're actually relational based. And so when the breakthrough really comes when you stop seeing AI as a product itself, and more so you start seeing it as a part of your evolution. So if you're able to better integrate it and really, really try to like be open-minded in ways that can actually benefit more than hurt, it's going to change the ballpark and like how one can see, or does business moving forward. Not just business, in life. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. And this was very special. I really like your unique perspective on go-to-market. Very different from what I've been gathering. Super helpful. How do you stay motivated? Everything is so fast-paced. It's changing. It's breaking. It's like moving to the next stage, and there's a next like release. Like it's all moving so fast. What keeps you pushing through?
I would always. That's a good question. So I will say making sure to keep. Well, first is making sure you have good sleep, because that's like, as far as physical attributes, that's going to be one of the most important things moving forward, because we all spend at least a third of our lives in bed, whether we like it or not. And having good sleep is going to be one of the most important things to do. As far the second one is just, when I try to think of things, sometimes I will be sad, or I will be mad, and sometimes it feels like it's out of my control. So I would try to remind, if and when those happens, inevitably it's going to happen in the future as well. It won't be the first, it won't be the last. I would always try to keep in mind of what my 90-year-old self would think, or what my future self, like 20, if not 50 years from now, what would like that person think about all this? You know, like we all live relatively short lives, maybe like 120 years max, maybe some for a million. But like when you think about the age of the universe and Earth itself, it's like talking like billions of years. It's, you know, it's all relatively kind of small. And so being able to, but at the same time, we're in a very unique space where we have been born with the opportunity to think, to be able to create, and to so as far as my personal motivation goes, it's like, okay, it's getting good sleep, you know, thinking about what myself would think 50 years from now, like, is the thing I'm doing like actually meaningful? And I think just talking to people, like trusted people, is also going to be important moving forward. People who can be that sort of confidant, who can also try to provide a sort of like unbiased opinion when possible, and like being open to that is something I try to like that keeps me moving forward. I mean, I have a rabbit named Lily as well, so it's like she's been great comfort. You can tell her everything and she won't even say a word. At least in this decade she can't say anything. So. Exactly.
And a rabbit. That's so awesome. And it's so unique. Like you gotta like take care of your future self and start like building a routine there. And sleep is so important because a lot of this work is brain heavy.
Right.
Let's talk about when you imagine your legacy. What do you want to be remembered for, the technology or the transformation?
I would hope to be the person to help lead civilization into a new era where we are not constrained by mere survival of just where hopefully because right now the majority of the world, they would love to work on this, but they are simply kind of like struggling in their day-to-day lives. I hope to be that sort of like pioneer in terms of like creating a new era where science, technology, and the arts can converge into one. So I hope to be that sort of like person that helps create a new renaissance for not only for the United States, but also for the world at large. Because my vision is like I would want our civilization to finally start thinking more in terms of becoming a multiplanetary species that is accommodating for all that wish to, you know, live amongst us, and to help contribute to the tapestry of uh, our Earth civilization itself, I would say. And hopefully like this renaissance can last, maybe instead of just like a decade, I'm hoping it would last like a century or so. But of course, in order for that to happen, it's like you have to take the steps needed to be able to like think about the greater picture and to be able to do what is right and what is needed. So I hope to be that sort of person who can embody that sort of Leonardo da Vinci or Benjamin Franklin, where they are not necessarily just like a master of just one craft, but rather multiple crafts in and of itself, and who has helped kind of like spearheaded the movement for a better world, or a better civilization, actually.
That's amazing. What an aspiration. Super inspiring. Now, for founders and data leader listening, what mindset do they need to lead responsibly in this AI era?
Yeah. So when I guess thinking about like the greater picture of like of what all this means, it would be important to, but what's most important today is not necessarily, you should not necessarily go to conquer it, or to reign supreme as what most people would look at. It should be like you shouldn't necessarily control it, rather you should be guiding it responsibly. And so the leaders who will thrive in this era are the ones who treat as intelligence as something to be cultivated, not exploited. And so that in itself begins with, okay, having literacy and humility. Like you don't need to be this sort of like expert at everything, or a machine learning expert, frankly, for that matter, but you must understand enough to ask the right questions. Like, where did this data come from? What biases would it have already carried behind that? Like who's gonna benefit from it, and who's gonna get left behind? And so being able to take into account those, minimizing the sort of suffering, if that makes sense, while maximizing outcomes, is going to be ever more important moving forward, no matter how, like, yeah, it's going to be important moving forward. And so also for the future pioneers out there, having transparency and traceability are also going to be very important, because in order to, so you need to build AI systems like you would build around trust. You need to make sure it's explainable, easily explainable, it's auditable, and it's accountable. And so when your team understands like why a model made a decision, then it allows them to gain more confidence instead of fear. And the same goes for like anyone in the community as well, when one has more knowledge of something. And so the most responsible leaders that I see are the ones that turn AI from this sort of black box into a glass box. And what's going to be the most like important trait as well is going to be having this sort of long-term mindset. Right now, many founders are already chasing the novelty. There's no doubt about that. But the wise ones, moving forward as time, in the years and decades ahead, they're the ones that chase endurance. And so being able to have this sort of AI like leadership responsibility isn't about like launching what's gonna go viral, what's the next viral tool. It's about creating like infrastructure and systems that make your organization and your people continuously smarter and more prosperous over time. Yeah. So like I guess in short, just like it's important to lead as a sort of steward of intelligence, both human and artificial. And overall, just the future will belong to those who build with both that sort of capability and conscience in mind.
Amazing. Love your perspective and great advice. How can people collaborate with you and learn from what you're building at Universal AI Services?
Yeah, they can definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. Right now it's linkedin.com/in/Fernando from SF. You can also reach out through the website, universalaiservices.com. So we're all very responsive at our mails and emails. You could also email me directly, fernando@universalaiservices.com, and just like, yeah, see where, like, please message me for like anything you have in mind, like thoughts, comments, suggestions, and opportunities moving.
What kind of partners and collaborators are you excited to connect with at this point right now?
But yeah, at least at this phase, it's around journalists, investors, people who try to help like spread the word. And I guess partners in terms of, okay, in terms of, we have this Project Atlas data set. We're trying to create an open source data set around smell, taste, and touch. So that's something in the not too distant future, you'd be able to annotate your grandmother's blueberry pie or your grandpa's chicken tikka masala. We're trying to create partnerships with people who would like to be able to start annotating that into a central database. And so we're just looking for everyone right now. Yeah, for those who would wish to work with us on that, as well as other fronts, from investors to media people to academics, and yeah, even entrepreneurs who would be interested in partnering to do other events in the future.
That's great. And hopefully that traction is reaching you as we speak.
Yes.
If you could leave your listeners with one truth about AI, leadership, or human potential, what would it be?
Growth. And the growth in the sense of keep an open mind and don't lose your humanity at the same time when you're trying to continue to build and grow is going to be ever more important, because it's a very fast-paced society environment that we're living in, at least here in Silicon Valley and in the world. Just continuing to have this sort of growth mindset is going to be ever more important, especially as we get older, because as we get older, the trend is towards safety and caution and becoming ever more cautious and secure, which in some ways it's nice, but in most ways that is not how Silicon Valley was made and how AI or all these technologies that we take for granted has came in the first place. So really having that sort of like open-minded value and essentially growing in more ways than one, not just like financially or professionally, but also like personally, is going to be, and also bringing others along so that someday they can be prosperous without the need to have this sort of two-way street, like without the need to get anything in return, is going to be ever more important. Having humility and growth, that is how you can truly grow.
That is precious. Thank you so much, Fernando. This was such a pleasure and a treat, and I'm sure my audience is going to love all your beautiful insights. Super unique. And to reach out, Fernando, or to ask any sort of question, LinkedIn, we're also leaving the links and information in this post, so feel free to comment and feel free to reach out to him on the website or the email. Thank you so much. All right, everyone, this was a wrap. A great episode learning about from cells to circuits, built-in universal AI, and super excited to have you, Fernando. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing me along as well. Take care.